Hello my friends, and welcome to my first somewhat in-depth video about Destiny. Today we're going to be talking about everything to do with Beyond Light. That's right, we're going to discuss and recap as much as we know about the new expansion landing on November 10th. So without further ado, let's head starside and fly straight into the news. So, way back, we were shown some teasers about Beyond Light, and we need to talk about both these teasers and the reveal trailer for Beyond Light. When the teasers and then the trailer debuted, we knew absolutely nothing about what was coming, and oh boy did Bungie ever deliver. Immediately, we're introduced to some fan favorite characters, Eris Morn, the Drifter, and a mysterious stranger. Now, those of you who have played D1 will remember her all too well. We're shown that the Drifter and Eris were called to the frigid wastes of Europa by the Exo-Stranger because a pyramid ship has been basically unearthed or has crashed on Europa, meaning that the darkness may have already been on the planet for some time. The major thing is, that's not the main threat of Beyond Light. We've now also seen the story trailer and the destination reveal for Europa, and Bungie threw even more information at us. There's a new fallen house, the House of Darkness, and it has a brand new Kel. Her name is Aramis. Why is Aramis and her house such a huge threat though? Well, she can wield the powers of the darkness thanks to her claiming a shard of it from the pyramid that currently exists on Europa. Now, we thought that Skolas, Tanyx, Axis, the Scorn Barons, that they were all bad, but Aramis is actually way worse. She can manifest powers of the dark, and she's gifted these similar powers to some key players within her House of Darkness, meaning that this is a massive threat to us. Now, some of you are probably going, Con, but we faced Fallen like this before, and they were easy to clap. Why would the House of Darkness be an issue? Well, this is actually the very first instance we have of the Darkness gifting one of the other races in Destiny with actual power. Yes, I know that the pyramid on the moon affected the hive that decided to build the Scarlet Keep near it, but they never actually got inside that pyramid ship. The nightmare field given off by the ship itself seemed to affect the hive in some mysterious ways on the moon, but it never directly gifted powers to them. With Aramis actually making somewhat of a pact with the darkness, we may begin to see a power shift now within Destiny 2 for some of the other races we've been battling for the past 6 years. On top of all of this, we were also shown our first glance of the Clovis Bray Exo facility that's housed on Europa. It is a massive complex that snakes its way under the ice in an almost labyrinthian fashion. We'll talk a little bit more about this later though. We also saw that a returning fan favorite character would also be making an appearance. One who disappeared right around the time that Forsaken appeared? Yeah, that's right, Varix has been sighted on Europa with Aramis, though we don't know in what capacity yet. Is Varix being treated as a friend? As a foe? A captive by Aramis? Well, we'll just have to wait and find out, I suppose. Moving right along, the biggest thing that we were shown off gameplay-wise was the fact that as Guardians, we'd be straying from the light in this expansion. That's right, we're actually getting to wield the powers of the darkness. Over the course of the campaign, we'll eventually unlock the ability to use a stasis subclass on our characters. What is stasis, you may ask? Well, according to Bungie, it manifests itself as a crystalline power, which looks an awful lot like ice. We've also been told that we'll be able to freeze, shatter, and pummel our foes into oblivion in this expansion, so the way the new darkness subclasses are represented are, to be honest, pretty goddamn cool. Oh god, wait, I can't help my brain from making puns. I'm so sorry about that. Anyhow, Warlocks are now known as Shadebinders, Titans as Behemoths, and Hunters as Revenants. Each subclass gets its own very cool weapons to wield while their super's invoked, and each of the subclasses has different abilities that handles totally uniquely. Shadebinders, for example, get a wizard's staff and can finally live out their wildest fantasies of casting spells that freeze and then shatter their foes apart, which of course I'm very pleased with as a Warlock main. Now, Revenants get to wield their powers while holding a pair of Kamas, which are basically like dual sickles, and it appears that Behemoths get to use their frozen fists? Or like a giant frozen cestus? I mean, I guess that's cool, so you do you, Titans, alright? The subclasses getting new weapons aren't the absolute best of these new abilities, though. For the very first time since D1, we'll be able to level up our subclass trees and customize them. You indeed heard me right. Bungie is allowing us to fully customize our stasis subclasses so that they do what we want within any given situation, and to encourage us to experiment with different stasis builds. The main way we'll be able to do this is by finding aspects and fragments while we journey across Europa. If you're wondering what aspects and fragments are, well, they're essentially manifestations of power related to stasis. For example, a frozen and severed Vexilem. Now, it hasn't been confirmed as to where we'll find all of these, but through the power of playing games for countless hours, I imagine exploration and some of the new activities on Europa will be our main source of acquiring these? Question mark? After finding an aspect, you can then slot it into your subclass tree, and then from there, modify them further with a fragment that will provide you with a different passive ability. We saw an example of this in the subclass trailers, where a warlock had modified their healing rift to freeze all the enemies that were surrounding them. That's just one example of the types of the new and interesting utility abilities you can unlock with this new system. Now, I just want to say that this is a great step in the right direction for subclasses. I almost wish that this was being applied to our old subclasses as well. Not only would this open up all kinds of experimentation for new builds, but because hunting down aspects and fragments is a new progression path and an endgame chase for all Guardians. And that, my friends, is a huge W in my opinion. Well, I hope you're still paying attention after all that, because there is even more to talk about. Bungie has also decided to revamp a whole bunch of the game. Some destinations are disappearing, some Crucible maps are being retired, Gambit's being condensed into Gambit Perfected, some old destinations from D1 are appearing for the first time inside Destiny 2, and we are even getting the Vault of Glass back. Now, this is all possible thanks to the new DCV system that Bungie is starting to employ in order to create a more fluid feeling world. In reality, it's an excellent strategy to rotate destinations in and out of focus so that they can rework content in peace and touchable destinations that no one really goes to anymore. And I know that there's been tons of discussion around the DCV, and some people feel as though this content is being removed from the game, punishing them from purchasing access to it, and penalizing them for not fully grinding out certain areas. But I can tell you with confidence that not only as a gamer, but as a game developer, this is actually for the best. The game is already around 100 gigabytes in size, and with Europa being added, we're going to probably see another 10 to 20 gigabytes in terms of increased size. With the DCV, we're getting a game that's much smaller, meaning less time installing and updating, RIP PS4 users, and Bungie is getting to focus more on their work in providing us with destinations that don't just waste our time or just have older content sitting on them that only a handful of users actually interact with. Bungie has also stated in previous TWABs that the old destinations were being updated to be in line with newer destinations and systems similar to the Dreaming City and now Europa. I believe this will let the devs have much better means to create more interesting events, activities, and to create just all-out better experiences for us in-game, and for that, I am not upset with this new system. I won't spend more time on this, but I will definitely say if you haven't read up on the deep dive into the DCV on Bungie.net, you should definitely go and check that TWAB out. Continuing our discussion on things going away, Bungie recently introduced us to sunsetting, which we know means that a bunch of our beloved loot is going to be power capped to below optimal power levels for Beyond Light. So we're going to need to loot and shoot all over again and reacquire some of the powerful weapons and gear that we now know and love. We've seen some of the new weapons released for Beyond Light, and I'm pretty hyped on them. They have a Frostpunk vibe to them, and what's more, the scopes and sights on these weapons actually have infrared or target marking. This isn't just a little gimmick either. Through another TWAB that Bungie released, they let us know that the weather systems on Europa will actually change moment to moment. And while we're exploring, that basically means that a massive blizzard could blow in, extremely limiting your visibility. So those scopes and sights are going to come in very handy, especially if the weather just changes on you and enemies all of a sudden spawn on top of you. The weather system changes are just another little cherry on top of all the goodness that's coming with this update. I, for one, can't wait to be trudging through the snow when suddenly the weather shifts and all hell breaks loose. It's going to make Europa feel more like a frozen wasteland, and more than just a standard destination to visit. It's important to say as we continue right along that we're not the only ones being changed in Beyond Light. Our ghosts are also going to be making a big shift. So far, we've been told that ghosts will actually be more customizable and that they'll function similar to other gear we have. In Beyond Light, ghosts will now have an energy value attached to them and will be able to swap in and out mods as much as we want. Every single ghost will have 4 total slots for ghost mods, and these mods are split into different categories. There's an experience slot, a tracker slot, activity slot, and a 4th masterwork slot that will basically allow you to tweak your ghost as needed depending on what you're doing in game. This change makes all of you ghost shell collectors out there probably pretty happy, and also allows users more freedom to mix and match their favorite looking ghosts, so we're not all stuck with the same speed demon guiding light based ghosts that we are now. Variety, people, you'll love to see it. Now, we've talked about so much already, and it's actually hilarious, but there's even more to talk about in this video. Previously I mentioned that Europa houses the Clovis Bray Exo facility underneath the frozen wastes of Europa. Well, it just so happens that along with every new expansion in Destiny, there's a new raid that gets thrown into the mix. Beyond Light is no different in that the Clovis Bray Exo facility will actually be taking us into the Deep Stone Crypt. We still don't 100% know too many details about this new raid, but from the hints recently dropped in the Collector's Edition that has been shipped out to people, and from other hinting factors in the trailers we've seen thus far, it seems very likely that we'll be exploring the Exo facility and the origin of the Exos in a lot of detail this November. The raid will release on November 21st, and just like the previous raid release, the contest modifier will be active, meaning that your seasonal artifact will be nullified, and any additional power levels you acquire from it will not exist while you're inside the raid. I, for one, cannot wait to see all of the raid race teams load up and attempt to get a world's first clear on this one. I have a very good feeling it's going to be one of the hardest and most unforgiving raids inside of Destiny yet, so let the hype train fucking commence. We're approaching the end of the video now, so let's summarize everything we've talked about so far. Coming in Beyond Light, we can expect a new destination to explore, new weapons, new exotics, new subclasses, new progression tracks, new dungeons, a new raid, changes to ghosts, new pinnacle chase, revamped new player experience, sandbox changes and balancing, new lore, new seasons, seasonal artifacts and activities, revamped back-end updates and system tool adjustments for Bungie, a continued effort to combat hackers, adept weapons, and much, much more. Even with this short list of changes incoming, we still don't know quite everything coming with Beyond Light, and I know there are a few things on here I didn't talk about, like the renewed, revamped New Light experience, as well as the back-end system changes being made to Destiny's engine and client. Well, maybe I can discuss those in a part 2 or a separate video, as I do want to keep this video from hitting the 15 to 20 minute mark, so for now, I'll just move on to some of my own opinions and speculation for this expansion, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible. From the get-go, we've been introduced to a host of new balancing changes, some brand new and returning destinations, and what appears to be a renewed focus from Bungie on ensuring that all player types are satisfied. From casual players to mid-cores to D1 veteran no-lifers, we seem to be almost witnessing a little bit of a rebirth from Bungie with this massive expansion. And for me, being a D1 alpha and 6-year veteran of the IP, I cannot emphasize how much I want this in my hands already. Bungie seems to be attempting to make good on promises and has already condensed down hand cannons into more thought-out archetypes. We're seeing some of the hated weapons of Destiny PvP getting properly nerfed and dealt with, and we're also witnessing proper sandbox shifts that seem to align with the majority of what the community actually wants to see. Bungie does indeed listen to us. Just read last week's TWAB, for God's sakes. Lore-wise, we're going to get to know even more about the Drifter, Eris, and the Exo Stranger, who I honestly and personally believe are some of the most interesting characters inside of the Destiny universe. We have a man who has survived since the Dark Ages, has the power to summon taken primevals, and can literally build time machines. We have an ex-hunter turned warlock who is one of the first to acquire and harness the power of stasis. And we have the Exo Stranger, someone who we thought was a rogue lightbearer like the Drifter, but we now know is actually a wielder of the darkness and has potentially traveled across timelines into our own to help us. Lore-wise, this expansion is going to blow some minds and turn some heads. On top of a fantastic new amount of lore, we're also getting new loot in the form of pinnacles, exotics, weapons, mods, ghosts, gear, aspects, fragments, and a revamped triumph system, which means more titles and just a host of new things for all of us to chase and further flesh out our Destiny careers and customize our Guardians. I'm very happy with what Bungie has shown so far into their continued effort to create progression tracks for us to invest our time in. It means we'll all be in the game a lot more, with more activities to do, to hang out in, and just enjoy what we all enjoy. Destiny. With the upcoming reemergence of the Vault of Glass via the DCV, we're also on the cusp of what I truly believe will change Destiny into a solid live service game. Bungie can plan limited time destinations, in-game challenges, and events using the DCV, and furthermore, if they need to take a destination away to make improvements, they now can. In the long term, this can mean so many different things for the game. Who knows, we may even eventually get that weekly featured raid playlist that we've all been shouting into the void for quite some time now. The amount of quality of life updates being made with the launch of Beyond Light just further cements why I've trusted Bungie with the majority of my free time over the past 6 years. They know how to make a fun game that respects your time while you're playing it, even if they have indeed made some slip-ups in the past. But honestly, no game developer is perfect in their approach to game development. I really want to ramble some more about a whole host of things, but I think what we've both recapped and said so far is more than enough. I'll leave you all with one more thing though. The raid this time is set to take place inside the Deepstone Crypt. We're for the very first time getting to see how and why the Exos potentially came to be, and we may even be seeing a Clovis Bray in the flesh potentially. Some of these events could have massive consequences in how the game develops, and there are even some things that have been revealed, thanks Collector's Edition, that may have already changed how certain events in the timeline, as we now know it, will be perceived. I hope you're going to join me and the rest of the community on November 10th and November 21st when everything finally opens up to all of us. Until then, if you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to drop a like. If you can't live without content like this, make sure you also hit that subscribe button and double check the bell icon is selected so that you get notified the moment that I release a new video. And with that, I hope y'all keep checking in, cause I'm punching out for now. See you Starside, my friends. Peace.